Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. So, on behalf of Cuts International, let me welcome all of you to today's webinar, where we are going to discuss role of Bhutan and Nepal in multimodal connectivity in the BBIN sub-region. Now, before I come to the substance, there are a couple of logistics or digital logistics announcement. One is that I think all speakers, you have been made as co-host. So, and your microphone will be on unmute version all throughout the program. So reason why we have made you co-host is because that then you can receive questions directly, questions or comments. So that's one. Secondly, we are going to follow a sequence of speakers. We are very pleased to have Mr. Purushottam Ojha, who is the former Commerce Secretary of Nepal. He has written a paper for us as part of this project. Then we have Mr. Bhimlal Suberi, who is the former Chief Planning Officer of the Policy and Planning Division in the Ministry of Information and Communications, the Royal Government of Bhutan. So he has also written a paper for us as part of this project. So they are going to present the essence of their arguments, including we request them to answer a few questions which we are going to pose for them. Then we have Ajhar Jaimurzina. She is the Chief of Transport Facilitation and Logistics Section in the Transport Division of UNESCA. We are very pleased to have her with us in this webinar. We have Arnob Bandyopadhyay, who is a Senior and Lead Transport Specialist in the World Bank Group based in New Delhi. And Mr. Hayashi, who is the Unit Head of SASEC for Regional Cooperation and Operations Coordination Division, South Asia Department, Asian Development Bank. So as part of this project, which is on multimodal connectivity in the BBIN sub-region, you may wonder that when we talk about multimodal connectivity, why are we putting so much of emphasis on Bhutan and Nepal, the so-called, I would quote unquote, so-called landlocked countries in this sub-region. And why I have said so-called is because if we look at their geography slightly differently, they can also be land-linked. So in other than that, in one of these papers, we have looked at how civil aviation can be better used for enhancing connectivity in this sub-region. So without any further ado, let me first request Mr. Ojha. This project, by the way, we are implementing this project with support from Foreign Commonwealth and Development Organization of the United Kingdom, formerly known as DFID, Department for International Development, with Asian Development Bank as our knowledge partner. We are getting very good support from both of them, and of course our project advisors and other specialists who are involved in this project. So first, coming to Mr. Ojha, the first question that I would like to pose to you is what is the value proposition that your paper has proposed in terms of facilitating greater aviation connectivity as a hub and spoke manner in the context of existing and emerging multimodal transport infrastructure in this sub-region? But before I hand over the microphone to you, let me also welcome Dr. Pritam Banerjee. Sorry, Pritam, I forgot to mention you. He is an independent trade and logistics expert, but closely working with both World Bank and ADB, and also working with us. And he is one of those experts whom we consult quite regularly while working on any logistic issues. So thank you, and over to you, Mr. Ojha.
Thank you, Bipul. First of all, I would like to thank Fox International for hosting this webinar, and very topical issues. What I see that we talked about landlocked, from landlocked to land linked. Of course, Nepal is a landlocked country. It wants to be land linked between the between its neighbor. That is a good initiative. Of course, we try to be a land linked country from the landlocked ones. So with regard to multimodal connectivity, what I see that this discussion has started with the signing of motor vehicle agreement, BBIN motor vehicle agreement back in 2015. Although this agreement is still to be made operational, and following the activist policy of government of India, of course, the discussions on multimodal connectivity in the sub-region and beyond it has started. So in my paper, I talked about air connectivity within the sub-region on a hub and spoke fashion. What I see that the four capital cities of BBIN countries, Delhi, Kathmandu, Paro, and Dhaka, they are well connected by the air services. We have regular services over there. Although uh, due to this pandemic, the services has been disrupted. But what I see that in a normal situation, we have to explore the possibilities of linking the other cities in these countries, those cities which are of commercially important, and those who are near to the religious sites. I think there are a lot of potentialities of linking this city by air services. For example, we have in Nepal, we are developing 3 international airports. One is in Pokhara, second in Bhairava, and third in Nisgat. Pokhara and Bhairava airports are in advanced state, while Nisgat airport, which is 76 kilometers away down from Kathmandu on the southern side, the progress is very slow. But what I see that being a touristic place, Pokhara can be connected with major cities of India like Lucknow, in Delhi, even Banaras, and from Bhairava, it is a religious city. It hosts the birthplace of Lord Buddha, Lumbini. So we can have the services from Lumbini to Bodh Gaya or Patna and other even in Dhaka. So I think there are a lot of possibilities. Say, for example, Assam in northeastern India, there are several Nepalese community staying there, and many Nepalese they visit Kamakya temple in Assam as well. So from the perspective of the regional tourism, the religious tourism, and other commercial activities, there are possibilities of connecting Assam with a Nepalese airport. And similarly, if you see with Bangladesh, and even in the past, we have talked about linking our Biratnagar, that is the biggest industrial hub in Nepal. It can be connected to Saidpur or Rajshahi in Bangladesh. So I think there are several areas that still need to be explored in order to create a link on a hub and spoke fashion. So for that to happen, what I see that these are very much important in terms of the promoting tourism, promoting trade, invest in getting people to people exchanges. So I think these are very important from the perspective of the integration, social and economic and social integration in the sub-region. But what I see that a word of caution is that we have to have the techno-economic feasibility study carried out in order to really operate the link these cities with the air services or the flight services. I think that is where we have to see it. And those some of the cities that I have named right now, it is a kind of larger idea or the conceptual ideas, but it has to be vetted by the techno-economic feasibility study, and the BBIN countries should endeavor to link those cities to each other in order to promote the tourism, in order to promote the investment, in order to promote the trade as well as the people-to-people exchange. I stop here right now.
Thank you, Mr. Ojha. You can add a number of other places to your list. I mean, this is actually in the paper you have provided an indicative list. Let me put it this way. For example, Gelefu in Bhutan can be added. So this is something which we have also seen during this pandemic. That all these small airports in India, I'm talking about,
Right.
they have actually been used more frequently, including for delivering medical equipments, medicines, to address the pandemic situation in our country. And if we can come out with a sub-regional plan under SCAP or under ADB or under World Bank, which is, and the base is already there, like India's Uran scheme, which is about developing small airports in small towns and cities. Many of those airports are actually, airstrip is already there. You have to develop the infrastructure, you have to upgrade the infrastructure. Those airstrips are there since the days of Second World War, particularly in
Right.
Northeast India
Right.
and Eastern India. So that is something which, and over time they can actually become not just for tourism, but also can give a much needed boost for our overall regional connectivity efforts.
Right.
Let me come to Mr. Suberi, and he has written a paper which is, I think it's an excellent piece of work, where he looked at the how Bhutan is placed in the existing and emerging multimodal connectivity initiatives in this sub-region. I'll give just one example. Bhutan is land linked. I won't call it landlocked, and there is not too much of waterways in Bhutan.
Mm, mm,
But Bhutan has entered into an agreement with Bangladesh to use Bangladesh's waterways to access Chittagong port, to access Mongla port, other than serving various other places in Bangladesh. So first, goods are transported by roadways to Dhubri port. There are other ports where it can be transported. I'm talking about just one part of Bhutan. Then if I go east, Gelefu and those region, the eastern Bhutan, they can be transported to Doki and from there to Bangladesh, and can also use waterways in that through that route as well. At the moment, goods are coming to Dhubri, getting loaded into barges, Bangladeshi barges, and then transported by waterways. So let me come to Mr. Suberi. If you can tell us what is the main value proposition that you have proposed in your paper so that Bhutan can effectively access sub-regional international markets through multimodal or intermodal means, of course, without compromising on its environmental concerns or its social concerns, which I think are very, very important to be considered. So over to you, Mr. Suberi, in about 10 minutes. Mr. Suberi, is he there?
So you're on mute.
Sorry. I was talking and it was still in mute mode. Thank you very much, Mr. Vipul, for inviting me. And I wish to convey good afternoon to all the panel members and participants who have joined this particular session. I have been, and at the outset, I would like to thank Kurz International and the Bhutan Media and Communication Institute for inviting me to participate in this important panel discussion. If I remember, if I recollect the email communication with Kurz, I haven't given a few specific questions. And the one which Mr. Vipul just posed happened to be part of the second or third part of the first question. So I do not know whether I should go and respond to that question or go in sequence of the questions that were given to me.
It's up to you. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so I will try to cover both the questions in my intervention, and I will assure that I will maintain the 10 minutes time given to me. So the first question is, how is Bhutan placed to integrate the existing and emerging intermodal infrastructure with India and Bangladesh? So in this regard, I wish to start by acknowledging some of the ongoing initiatives under SARC, SASEC, which is really BBIN, and BIMSTEC on the subject of transport connectivity in the region. UNESCAP and Asian Development Bank have played a very important role in promoting regional integration and transport connectivity in the region. The double laning of the 171 kilometer of the Asian highway network within Bhutan, which is nothing but the AH-48, was completely financed by the government of India. Similarly, the ADB has been instrumental in providing technical and financial assistance in the development of transport logistics and trade facilitation infrastructure, including land customs station, access road, and dry port in Phuentsholing area. While road transport remains the most important mode of transport, the need to develop multimodal transportation has been emphasized in all these regional and sub-regional interventions, such as SRMTS, which is the SARC format, the BIMSTEC Transport Connectivity Master Plan, and the SASAC program. And these studies have recommended railway connectivity and inland water transport for Bhutan as well. And the idea of developing internal, taking cue from this recommendation, the idea of developing internal railway network has also been conceived by the government, and the works could start, I would not say very soon, but in the near future. And it's hoped that the works on developing railway link from the Indian railway network would also be taken concurrently. This is only my expectation. Will have to depend on many other factors. With regard to the inland water transport, a start has already been made, as stated by Mr. Bipul, by where Dhubri river port has been used. However, owing to deficiency in infrastructure and other challenges, the services are currently suspended. Yeah, that is what I was given to understand. In the meantime, considering the potential, two additional river ports, Jogigopa and Pandu, which is near Guwahati, have recently been approved by the government of India for use by Bhutanese traders. Therefore, with India and Bangladesh governments committing to invest in improving the inland waterways, IWT looks promising. International trade and logistics is expected to be streamlined further and made more efficient after the completion of a new megaport in Phuentsholing. The works have, in fact, already started. And two other dry ports in Gyelephu and Nanglam are already in the planning stage, and works physical works would start anytime soon. And for this purpose, two additional crossing points have also been identified very recently by the government of India to facilitate bilateral trade with India, and obviously through India to Bangladesh as well. So that is part of my first intervention. Moving on, I'll quickly touch on the second and the third, and then conclude. With reference to Bhutan's role in promoting multimodal transport connectivity, the scope unfortunately seems limited, in my opinion, since railway development and inland water transport would remain outside the geographical boundary of Bhutan. So everything will depend on how things move in the two countries. Nevertheless, considering the growing demand and need to shift towards environmentally sustainable mode of transport, railway connectivity might become a reality soon. Recognizing the need to reduce excessive dependence on road transport, India and Bhutan had concluded a MOU back in 2005 to establish railway links to 5 border towns. Lately, another potential border town has also been identified, and high-level discussions are taking place regularly in this regard. So we are keen to see at least one of the links becoming operational in the near future. The use of inland waterways has made much progress, as stated earlier, with the signing of MOU with Bangladesh government. This will, however, require 3 parties to agree on the details. India, Bangladesh, and Bhutan will have to agree on a number of operating modalities. for the system to become really operational. So taking the above in view, Bhutan could instead take advantage of multimodal transport available in India for access to markets elsewhere. In addition, Bhutan could also play a supportive role by participating in these sub-regional initiatives as and when this come about. So my third intervention is on the question of value proposition, which Mr. Bipul was asking me in the first instance. On the question of value proposition, neighboring countries have been extremely generous in allowing the use of road network, seaports, and other facilities to access regional and international markets. So value proposition, in my understanding of the term used here, could come in the form of receiving continued support from neighbors in these areas through the following intervention: by continuously keeping the road network in a good condition, ensuring uniform enforcement of traffic regulations, regulating cross-border movement of vehicle traffic, streamlining documentation, and finally creating awareness at the local level, because often there are issues, isolated issues, obviously, which our traders have to face when they operate in India or enter into Bangladesh. So using the inland railway system, Bhutan could take advantage of transporting freight through the larger trans-Asian railway network as well. Similarly, the inland water transport could be used to connect the seaports for accessing markets elsewhere. A small volume of cargo could, however, prove to be a problem initially, but hopefully things will pick up and the volume would increase as well. Unlike sub-regional and multilateral agreements, bilateral agreements, in my opinion, seem to offer advantage in negotiating favorable terms to address specific challenges faced by, I would still say, landlocked and a small country like Bhutan. I think Bhutan is still landlocked in the absence of railway and the direct connection to the IWT. And notwithstanding the fact that transshipment of cargo at the border crossings add to the cost, delays, and possible damage to goods, this is currently a major concern of the truckers since they fear losing their livelihood. So their real wish is the transshipment system should continue. This is not very consistent with the regional thought, but that is really their intention. Then overall, in my opinion, the existing arrangements for bilateral and transit trade seem fairly adequate and may likely continue unless some other new formats or new suggestions are recommended by other countries or agencies like World Bank, ADB, and UNESCAP. I do not know. I have the last section dealing with air transport. Should I continue or
yes,
will
in a couple of minutes?
Okay, I'll hold on then. So I'm stopping for now.
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Or
Or you can continue for another 2 minutes.
Okay, no problem. I'll take exactly 2 minutes. So the next question is to do with the potential of Gallifrey Airport and its linkages with other infrastructure in the sub-region. In this regard, what I would like to at the outset clarify is Gallifrey has only a very short runway and it does not cater to long body aircraft. Therefore, it is being used purely for a domestic operation using a small aircraft, which is with 48 people, but a lot of load penalty. So air services in Bhutan currently operate under daylight conditions due to natural limitations. Unlike the international airport at Paro, Gallifrey provides opportunity of using instrument landing system, which is a big advantage. thereby enabling nighttime operation and also during bad weather conditions. It will reduce dependence on the existing airport and will be especially important during emergencies. The two airlines will also improve aircraft utilization by adding new routes and reduce operating costs by avoiding diversions during bad weather. Adding new markets, however, has its own set of challenges. These markets are generally not feasible under third and fourth freedom kind of arrangement. So these have to be operated under the fifth freedom traffic rights. Therefore, India, Bangladesh, and Nepal could play important role by granting such rights to our airlines to operate air services into these countries and then beyond, possibly to markets like Middle East and Asian countries. The Gelfu Airport will also supplement other economic activities after the establishment of a transport hub and a dry port there, which are in planning stage. The proximity to a large population from the Indian state of Assam and access to the Indian highway network could also prove beneficial for this airport to be sited in Gelfu. So Gelfu could supplement the existing international airport at Paro during emergencies and expand route network as it is already showing signs of congestion. Paro is getting a little busier and crowded. So making Gelfu Airport, however, operational would involve huge investment. And luckily for us, ADB, I think, has already committed assistance to prepare the detailed feasibility study. And based obviously on the feasibility study, hopefully investment would follow soon thereafter through ADB or whatever support we will be able to mobilize. So finally, given the complexity of the subject of cross-border movement and the multimodal transport connectivity, I may not have responded fully to the questions. Therefore, if anyone has any specific questions beyond this, please let me know, and I will try my best to respond. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Suveri, for pointing out a number of initiatives which are taking place in Bhutan and how useful they will be for intermodal or multimodal connectivity for the Bhutanese economy. You have rightly pointed out a number of regulatory issues as well. I'll come back to this point later on. But before that, let me come to our panelists or other speakers. First, let me come to Ajar from UNESCAP. You know that there are a number of initiatives which is being implemented by UNESCAP. For example, the Asian Highway Network, the Asian Railway Network, then Dry Ports Network. So what would be interesting to know from her that how useful they are for seamless movement of goods in this sub-region, and also what kind of lessons which we can draw from, say, for example, ASEAN customs transit system for this sub-region, and also how useful this paperless trade agreement would be, because Bangladesh has become a signatory to that. India, I guess, is also a signatory. How useful would that agreement be for seamless movement of goods in this part of the world? So over to you, Ajar, in about 10-12 minutes.
Okay, yes, thank you very much. And thank you. It's a pleasure to be part of this panel, and I've already picked up quite a few useful ideas and reflections. So I'm really grateful to the previous speakers, even though I have to admit that UNESCAP does not work on air transport connectivity, only in as much as it relates to perhaps landlocked developing countries or land-linked. We can look into this topic, but I think we could also perhaps be a bridge with another UN organizations that do work on this, because there were quite a few interesting ideas I picked up already listening to my colleagues. So when I say that UNESCAP works generally, there are limits to what we do. It's really in terms of the kind of intervention and support that UNESCO provides. The Trans-Asian Railway Network, the Asian Highway Network, and dry ports, sort of broad institutional frameworks for the development of hopefully in the future fully intermodal transport system for Asia Pacific. So it's I hope most of you are familiar with the agreements, but generally all they define is what the regional network is looking like, what are the main arteries within the countries, within the sub-region and across sub-regions that link our economies together. So in this sense, they're quite broad framework agreements, and the parameters, infrastructure quality parameters that they define for railways or Asian highways or dry ports are fairly flexible and perhaps not as high-tech and cutting-edge because it reflects the diversity in the country. What is the value added? What is the purpose of those agreements? It's really to paint the big picture, to see if we have major gaps and have a way of linking a bigger, diverse region together. But at the same time, we do realize, and this has been a constant attitude in UNESCO's work, is that a lot of solutions are multilateral, if not bilateral. So I would like to go back to what Mr. Suberi was saying, that some bilateral agreements offer you the flexibility and tailor-made approach, especially not just infrastructure, but for operational connectivity, for transport facilitation. So we're very much afraid of that. So we're very much aware of this. So in that sense, as a general remark and the first remark, I would say, think of our agreements as the big picture of what is happening with the connectivity in the region. But then we need to zoom in on a diverse and very specific needs of our countries and the configurations that some have quite developed or potentially a well-developed network of waterways. Some do not. Some have a legacy of railway networks. Some are developing it. So it is a mixed picture. But in what way can our agreements or ESCA board can help linked countries in South Asia? I would say there are quite a few elements that we could highlight. First of all, even though we sort of paint the big picture, even the big picture shows the shortages in the connectivity. And when I say infrastructure, it's infrastructure connectivity, mainly not just missing links, but the quality on infrastructure. The Asian highway routes in many of our countries are still of less than recommended standards. And we know that there's a big burden, financial burden on the countries, especially countries with special needs, as we call them, or least developed countries that have, in terms of developing and maintaining the infrastructure. So even a big bird's view, let's say, perspective on transport connectivity in the region shows the shortages in infrastructure connectivity. So that's the first, perhaps, element that helps us accompany countries in future development. But the second element is very important as well, is that even though we primarily looked at infrastructure connectivity and the agreements are mainly infrastructure agreements, what we use them for is highlight the fact that you need to have the soft connectivity. You need to have operational elements. You invest in so much in new infrastructure, but if you don't address the efficiency of your border crossing, if you don't facilitate transport, you can't really, you won't get the return on your investment. And very little money we have, we don't get the pay. So our agreements do help us to convey this message. So whenever a country comes to us and say, we're building another land bridge, we're building this part of the missing link of TAR or Asian highway, we always convey the message, okay, does it come with necessary reform in terms of transport facilitation and efficiency of border crossing? And this has been a very highlighted and very strong message, especially when it comes to railway connectivity. And I'm grateful that my colleagues already spoke about the potential of rail. We're talking about Indian railways and the region that has such a legacy and potential and perspective for further development. And we've seen that during the COVID crisis as well. So I think we really this part of insisting that transport facilitation is a high need for landlocked countries, and then they will depend on the cooperation with the transit partners to able to really get the benefit of the infrastructure connectivity, as it were. So we are highlighting infrastructure gaps. We drawing attention to the connectivity, infrastructure connectivity. And lastly, I would say, because I spoke already about rail, promoting rail is one of the momentums for us. But lastly, I would say we're more and more putting emphasis on logistics competence, right? So we're not just going by road, rail, but really what links them together, the function of intermodal terminals, of dry ports, our agreement on dry ports, that has been over the recent years, really, I would say, nexus of a lot of interest in connectivity by landlocked developing countries. We have more and more of them joined. Lao PDR has joined recently. We have countries in Central Asia that are participating, and of course, dry ports and this intermodal connectivity, the function of intermodal transport corridors. This is something that we also try to promote using our infrastructure agreement. So in a nutshell, I would say we paint the big picture. We help you convey let's say the needs, the persistent challenges, some progress that is being made, especially, and I'm coming back to my very first remark, at the multilateral level. We actually looked at BBIN, motor vehicle agreement, when it was there. We highlighted it as one of the interesting development in the region that really zooms in on a very very, very acute and practical need. So we are very much, in as much as we would like the greater harmonization, integration of the region, we support the countries in every steps that they would like to make, bilaterally or multilaterally. We see value added in each level of the intervention. Let me jump to the second part of your question, and I'll be happy to elaborate on the previous points if there's a need, but I know I'm mentioning quite a lot of things. You spoke about Asian customs transit system, and I knew the agreement on the framework agreement on paperless trade by UNESCOP that has just entered into force on the 20th of February. So what's the value added, how they can help us? And help especially in this particular case. And what I'd like to convey, but I think I'm preaching to the choir converted here, is that COVID-19 pandemic has really brought the message home how important the effective transit is, right? So we've seen, and one of the elements that we were picking up from the beginning is that pay attention to the landlocked countries. They will pay the cost of the restrictions nationally, but also in the transit and other trading partners. So we were very, I would say, probably quite alarmed about the situation. So it brought the message home how transit system for South Asia is very important. But it also showed that some major reforms in terms of digitalization or electronic exchange of data or electronic tracing of cargo are within reach if there is a political will. And we've seen amazing things happening during the COVID-19, a lot of dynamism, a lot of new railways going not fully digital, but very, very with bold steps in creating online platforms and facilitating their operations. So in that sense, I think there's a window of an opportunity here. There's a possibility for doing more, and certainly in terms of putting together a multilateral transit system, hopefully with a very advanced use of electronic exchange of information and let's say new technologies. And I would say the great news is that we're not starting from scratch. Of course, UNESCOP has provided a lot of tools for cross-border transit operations. There are models that were put in place. We also know that Nepal is doing a lot of work on electronic container tracking that help them reduce times and costs of transit. So there are many initiatives that could be put together in a very nice, comprehensive package. And whatever UNESCAP can do to support this work, we would be happy to do so. We've done that in the past. And you could learn a lot from ASEAN example and their work on the developing ASEAN custom transit system, which is fully automatic, or in principle, in its ambition, it's an automatic transit system. It's still work in progress, but already at this point, you need to think about interoperability and the linkages with ASEAN, which could further boost transit and transport among those two sub-regions. So it's absolutely an agreement and the sub-region to look into and try to facilitate, try to establish links. And lastly, a paperless trade agreement. I would say it's a fantastic tool to have now. We're very happy to see Bangladesh taking such a leadership and being one of the first countries who've went on with making this dream a reality. It is a trade-driven agreement. It's very, paperless trade facilitation, as it were. There are some elements in transit, but I would say there are some elements of transport facilitation and digital transport services that could really benefit from the attitude and overall ambition of the agreement, but more technical work would need to be done. But I would say if already implementation of the framework agreement on paperless trade would help us immensely, maybe in a wider range of issues, and we'll probably highlight the shortages and others. But this is certainly one of the key tools for the region. And by the same token, I would like to invite all of you to contact UNESCAP for technical assistance and support, capacity building on this agreement, where this is a priority for this year, and support is available there. So I'm coming from the transport side, but I'm sure I can commit already my trade colleagues for further support. So dear Chatterjee, can you tell me, do I have a few more minutes so I can stop here and continue?
Another couple of minutes, maybe?
Yes. Well, then let me just maybe focus on the broad key message. In last year, during the pandemic, well, it's actually during the first stages, let's say, of pandemic, we've done a special policy brief on South Asia and BBIN countries on what is happening with the transport connectivity in the region. And I'm sure, hopefully a lot of what you've been said and you've been known has been touched upon in this brief, but not to this great and valuable level of details as we're hearing today. But one of the things that we picked up is that it magnified the shortages of connectivity that the sub-region has, but it also showed the potential for reform. And out of this, as we're now learning and looking at the lessons learned, there is a possibility for reforms and a possibility for bold actions, which we can link to this ambition of building back better. And there are funds available, there are supports available from the UN system. In particular, we have a UN-wide project on trade and transport connectivity in the times of pandemic. So what we're looking for is a very concrete proposals by the countries that already have a political will, as it were, or at least some major group of stakeholders. So I think CATS International has a role to play. Everyone here has a role to play. If you want to pitch some very specific ways in which we are building back better in terms of transport connectivity, you can think about UNESCAP. We will be very happy to hear your ideas and work with you on that. So I will stop here. And I look forward to the rest of the intervention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajar. I'm glad that you underlined the importance of soft infrastructure, including capacity building of officials, including having right regulations in place, including, regulations not just in terms of technical issues, but also standards. That's again a technical matter, because otherwise we are going to see more and more technical barriers to trade, not in terms of the WTO TBT agreement, but on the ground. And we do have some ideas, including how to do a safe trade, safety in terms of health safety. I understand that in East Africa, under the TMEA initiative, Trademark East Africa initiative. This transit system, I mean, they have done a lot of, they are actually right now doing a lot of,
Electronic transit tracking
uh,
system. Yes, yeah.
and ADB is also doing it in our part of the world. So we'll be in touch with you in that regard. So let me now come to Mr. Bandyopadhyay. Arnab, you have heard all the speakers so far. We have a couple of questions for you, but I would be very interested if you can focus on how do you see this Eastern Waterways grid in this overall context of infrastructure development which is taking place in this region. How important, because we know that that's going to be very, very important. It's not just over the river Ganges. There are a number of other rivers, including Brahmaputra, other tributaries, a number of states involved in India. We're also thinking of engaging with Bangladesh. We are looking at how Nepal and Bhutan can also can be benefited from that. So how do you see that in this whole context of emerging transport connectivity in the BBIN? Over to you, Arnav. In about 10 minutes.
Thanks so much, Vipul, for having me, and excellent discussion. So enjoyed also reading those couple of policy papers and all your policy papers, in fact, which keep coming from time to time. Essentially, the Eastern Waterway Grid is, is a concept of about 3,500 kilometers of interconnected waterways in this region, mostly in India and Bangladesh. As you'd realize that the Ganga, Brahmaputra, Padma, Meghna river system, that's a system which is, is not limited by the boundary, the geographical boundary, or because it has always existed. It has been a very vibrant, actually, waterway, say before the partition, before all of this was one country, and 40 to 45% of freight was actually moving in this region through waterways. Unfortunately, that has now come down to 1% or 2% of the overall regional trade. However, we do have an opportunity. We have a huge opportunity here to kind of revive that system.
Sorry, slightly louder, slightly.
Okay, maybe let me.
Maybe you are away from microphone.
Okay. No, let me try and see if I can increase the volume a little bit.
It's all right.
Is it better now?
Yeah, much better. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much. So essentially, the idea is to use the Ganga and Brahmaputra river system, which is interconnected seamlessly through Bangladesh, the IBP route, or the Indo-Bangladesh Protocol route, which is about 3,500 kilometers, as the backbone for this particular grid. And then the individual, even your landlocked or land-linked countries, they are like Nepal and Bhutan, they can benefit from it through road, or in future perhaps rail connectivity, by connecting to these various river ports. And we see a lot of already, as you have said, a lot of kind of energy and enthusiasm, and I would say a bit of political championing also now at a very high level, even among the prime ministers of India, Bangladesh, and Nepal. I would particularly mention kind of recognizing the value of this grid, or recognizing the value of this alternate transport system, and then bringing it into this larger multimodal transport and logistics framework, I would say. So just to give you a few examples, I mean, what is currently happening, or where specifically the countries could actually benefit from. So let me start with Bhutan. You did mention about the Phuent Shillong to now Chittagong movement, using, of course, part of road section in India, and then from Dhubri in India using the Jamuna river further downwards. There is also an opportunity for similarly for developing this Jelifu Jogigopa link. Jogigopa is one place on Brahmaputra where this new multimodal ADB is actually supporting development of this multimodal logistic cluster, and there is an excellent linkage there with Jelifu. So the whole Jelifu dry port, the airport, and essentially the ICP, that could also become a new linkage. Similarly, looking at on the Nepal side, there has been a recent feasibility study which bank had supported, And there is, of course, a recognition that the rivers in Nepal, they are not navigable, unfortunately. Even those Indian rivers which are generating from Nepal are not like Gandaki, which is in India, Gandak. However, there is an excellent opportunity again to utilize the Indian, the new river ports which have already come up and fully operational, like Sahibganj and Varanasi, and the new one, the container, river port, which is coming up opposite Patna, and linking this with the various like Sahibganj with Biratnagar, then the Kalughat or the Patna with Birganj and Varanasi with Natunwa. So that's a reality today. I mean, the countries are today talking about it. They're including in their bilateral kind of trade and transit treaty. There's new protocol routes between India and Nepal. And India and Bangladesh, of course, things are rapidly, I would say, are kind of improving in terms of utilizing this waterway or the multimodal linkage. So a couple of things also I wanted to mention about it. I think what are the challenges? Yes, there are a lot of challenges on the trade side. I'm not going to repeat all of those. I think those are kind of known. You mentioned about the whole regulatory challenges, the harmonization challenges, which are daunting to some extent. However, I think also there is an added challenge for this waterway, which is the waterway has been developed globally, if you see, as a part of an integrated water resource management, at a basin level integrated water resource management concept. But it kind of has driven, if you look at Western Europe, the commercial interest for waterways is actually driven than a more responsible integrated waterway management. We see that in Mekong basin. We have actually seen that a little bit even in Africa, in Congo river basin. So I think those are the kind of global examples for us to follow. And surely if not only the waterway, the rivers also are increasingly being recognized as a kind of, an economic corridor, which can be used for actually benefiting the riverine community, which are often very poor in this region, both are those people living on Ganga or Brahmaputra or even in Jamuna. And we see these programs like, Earth Ganga program in India, similarly, or the Brahmaputra program and Brahmaputra, or the Jamuna, the Green Economic Belt program in Bangladesh. So these are all essentially, efforts to kind of revitalize the local economy, their livelihood, their better access to markets and jobs. And eventually that would actually benefit all of the other countries, because as trade is moving closer to this waterway, it is easier, the last mile and first mile connectivity problems, become relatively lesser. So I think that is, a kind of an initiative which we need to think of. The other critical, I would say, opportunity, I would not say challenge, opportunity is also to link coastal with inland waterways. So this grid has also a linkage, both in terms of linking with Myanmar, as the India has helped developing a certain port, and then the kind of system, multimodal system is developing currently, actually helping to develop in Myanmar, and the Kaladan project, through the Kaladan project, as well as now the bilateral agreement between Chittagong and Kolkata and between India and Bangladesh, I would say the coastal shipping, that's also getting improved. So can we also have a vision where the inland waterways and the coastal shipping can be better integrated? Yes, there are again challenges in terms of river sea vessels, in terms of also kind of again harmonizing marine standards with river standards, and all to have a kind of an unified, I would say, an ecosystem, so that goods can seamlessly move from an origin inland to say in India to Bangladesh, or India from mainland India to Northeast India. However, these are the kind of opportunities this grade offers. The last point I wanted to mention here is this whole issue of how to drive this, some of these challenges in terms of trade and regulation through kind of a regional platform. I mean, there are a couple of areas which I quickly like to highlight. One is, we have seen these river basin organizations, they have been very effective in driving this in various, 5 or 6 examples in promoting a kind of more integrated vision, an integrated institutional vision. This region is quite far away, but we are kind of advising or discussing with the government a 3-stage approach here. Initially starting with an kind of an MOU among the countries, and then moving to an administrative arrangement, and then finally moving to a kind of a regional convention like in Europe. Of course, even an administrative arrangement would help. So there would be a regional body which would have, which will be kind of a networked, arrangement with all of the countries individually who will contribute. And then at an arm's length for this particular body, there has to be a kind of a digital platform, which was also being discussed by my UNS CAP colleague, that where the information can actually flow digitally and smoothly, so seamlessly. So actually, if a vessel is moving from Bangladesh this time to India, already where it is, when it will reach, and what it is carrying. You don't need to, come and hit at an Indian port and then you will discover it. I mean, that's what is currently happening. And then there has to be also, as the global experiences, so a kind of, I would say, a center of excellence or a knowledge base, which will actually support developing specific, region-specific, I think, requirements in terms of technology standards, in terms of harmonization needs, in terms of also identifying projects. Because currently what is being done, say the line of credit of India is flowing to Bangladesh for improving IBP. But can we actually do it more systematically so that it is made projectized, and rather than spreading, I would say, the resources a little bit thin on dredging or night navigation, can we actually identify sections of projects, which actually people are working with us to identify a couple of such pilots. So I think those are some of the thoughts I have. So I like this great vision. And just one last point I wanted to mention, and I think we shouldn't miss that. You haven't asked me that question directly, but let me also mention. You see, air freight is a very, very promising sector. So it is perhaps growing among all of the transport sectors at the highest rate today, 12 to 15% globally. And BBIN, if I may use an aviation term, hasn't taken off at all. I mean, and in this case, sky is the limit. Our, the air trade in the BBIN is just 2% or 3% of what, say, Asia Pacific does. If we just compare, we do not go to EU, but we just compare with Asia Pacific. So my sense is, I think a focus has to slightly expand. I know that countries like in Bhutan, I think ADB has helped them to develop this, the new aviation policy in terms of unbundling functions, etc. They are becoming modernized, but I think this vision has to be kind of enlarged, people, to include freight and logistics in that. It is, of course, tourism is important, people-to-people connection is important. Actually, air freight can play a very important role. And if you have a network, you mentioned about Uran, I don't think we should be bothered too much about, if you have a small airport somewhere, or we have a challenge of, expanding kind of a runway for receiving bigger aircraft. We can have a vision wherever this is appropriate. If it is properly linked, we can develop a larger airport, or we can carry the good and move to another, a bigger airport. So the value-added industries or high-value industries, that's the only way. I mean, it hasn't. Globally, again, we have seen. You talk about Singapore, you talk about Dubai. They have taken a real advantage of this, and we have to seriously think about, how to use this air connectivity more from an air freight and logistics point of view, just not people-to-people connectivity and tourism. So let me stop here. Thanks.
Thank you, Arnab, for highlighting all these initiatives. We have made a note of them, and going forward, we are going to talk to experts like you on how can we take forward some of the initiatives that you have mentioned, including looking at air freight as one possible areas where a lot of work is to be done. Now, one area which we haven't touched upon, I'll come to Pritam on that as last speaker, is railways. I think all these things we have to look at much more holistically, not just in terms of, so far we have looked at them in silos. Now we have started looking at them, so far we have looked at transport connectivity more in terms of roads. Now we have started relooking at them in respect to waterways. Now we have started looking at them in terms of railway connectivity, now air connectivity, air freight, and things like that. What you also need to do is to look at them much more holistically in an intermodal or multimodal manner. I'm glad that you are pursuing with the governments on the setting up of this institutional approach, I would say, for river basin management. And that can be looked at also from multimodal point of view. So there are a number of good examples from around the world on that. I'm not going into the details of them at the moment. But let me come to Mr. Hayashi. Mr. Hayashi, after hearing all this, though, I know that we have posed a couple of questions for you, including that what kind of lessons which you can draw from Central Asia, CAREC experience, or Greater Mekong Subregion, GMS experience for the infrastructure development in the BBIN. And but my more specific question would be that I know that Asian Development Bank has been working on this subject for a long time in Central Asia, in South Asia, in GMS region, and also in other parts. Now, as a COVID-19 response strategy, I think infrastructure connectivity is going to be one of the major pillars of it. So how do you see that all these transport corridors that we are talking about, how can we transform them, not just as transport corridor, not just to be used for transportation of goods, but also as economic corridors? So over to you, sir, in about 12 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank Katz for giving me this opportunity to be a part, the panelist in this webinar today. I think let me first talk about the SASEC program, which we are now undertaking in this region. As you know, SASEC program has started in 2001 with the request from Bangladesh, Bhutan, India, and Nepal, so BBIN countries. So actually, our SASEC program started with these 4 countries. And later on, Maldives, Sri Lanka joined in 2014, and Myanmar joined in 2017. And I think this program is a project focused institutional right program, and what I mean is project based is that the main purpose is to coordinate the projects, regional cooperation projects, so that each project benefit will be maximized. Institution right means that unlike other agencies, organizations, we don't have a solid secretariat, but actually ADB is functioning to support the program. We have the SASEC vision documents endorsed by the SASEC finance ministers meeting in 2017. And under this document, we are currently focusing on 3 sectors: transport, trade, facilitation, and energy. Under this program, we have several initiatives. One is SASEC corridors. We have identified 6 SASEC corridors, considering the big pictures provided by the UNESCAP Asian highways, but also we have reviewed all the each government strategy to prepare transport network. We also see the demand, expected demand in the future. So we identified those 6 corridors. In this context, I would like to mention that my colleague in ADB is currently preparing CMS model, multi-sub-region and multi-mode strategic transport planning model, to estimate the transport flow patterns, and also it generates cost estimates for multimodal transport modes. It not only covers BBIN countries, but it also covers CAREC and also Southeast Asian countries. So I think once this model started to work, I think we can estimate the transport demand for these corridors. Under these SASEC corridors, we collect all the information of projects and status of the projects, what are the gaps. So so we are collecting not only ADB projects, but what the other development partners doing, including World Bank, JICA, AIIB, and we are trying to present the holistic picture, development picture of each corridors, so that people can share what are the gaps, projects should be prioritized, so that overall these SASEC corridors will be developed. So that is one of the initiatives we are taking under the SASEC. The other initiatives, including as some speakers mentioned, we are supporting the transit to facilitate transit cargo, introducing the electronic cargo tracking system. We have supported ECTS for the transit cargo to Nepal, from Calcutta to going to Birganj. Recently, Vizag has also included as a starting point. Recently, we are supporting transit arrangement for Bangladesh, so that this is also together with the introduction of ECTS. So this arrangement will support northeastern region of India accessing Bangladesh ports, as well as northeastern region can access to the main part of India going through Bangladesh. So these are the major initiatives we are undertaking under this SASEC program. So if I may, coming to your point on the economic corridor, we have been supporting economic corridor studies, started with the east coast of India, and then we have done the same for Sri Lanka, that is for Colombo-Trincomalee route. Then I think we have recently concluded study for Bangladesh southwest corridor. And currently, we are taking the study for northeastern region of India and northeast corridor under Bangladesh. So these are the ongoing studies for economic corridors. As you can see, these studies are currently national studies. So as the next step, we are trying to connect these economic corridors. What are how the corridors can complement each other. And I think this is quite important under this COVID-19 situation, because by connecting those economic corridors, we try to have a regional supply chain network, and that would be much more resilient than economic corridors outside the region, especially in the case of pandemic. So that is one areas that we are going forward. So this is what we are currently doing. Yeah, thank you very much. Let me stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ayasi, and we have been getting very good knowledge support from Asian Development Bank as part of this initiative. And your colleague, Mr. Kwancheng Wang, who I understand is also participating in this program today. We're getting very good support from him and his team. And I understand that many of the results or inputs which we are generating from our work, they are going to be used in developing this transport modeling work. So on that note, let me now come to Dr. Pritham Banerjee, who is a trade and logistics specialist. Pritham, after hearing all these speakers, all these initiatives, I have a couple of questions for you, or thoughts, not questions. One is that how are you going to weave logistics into all this? I may be wrong. I may be wrong in taking logistics as a separate subject as against transport facilitation. I may be right because they may be looked at separately, and then we need to see how we can weave the two, number one. And number two, all these initiatives are going to generate employment, new jobs, new kind of employment, I would say. You would require new skills. At the same time, there is going to be job loss in some cases. So how are we going to balance these two? So these are the two questions or thoughts or clarifications, whatever way you put it, that I have for you. In about 10 minutes, Pritam, I know that you have another meeting.
Thank you very much, Vipulda, for having me in this very august panel, and a good afternoon to everybody here. Your second question is more complicated, so I will deal with it second. I will try to answer the first question, which is somewhat easier to understand. So, in terms of what logistics is nothing, at least in my opinion, is the physical infrastructure plus an ecosystem of services that uses that infrastructure to deliver goods from one point to another and provide other value-added services that are required by the supply chain. So you need a physical infrastructure, so you need a master plan. We heard a lot of the speakers discuss this, how the infrastructure planning is happening. There is the BIMSTEC master plan, a lot of work is happening for the inland water. You have civil aviation initiatives in terms of airport development. Last mile rail missing gaps are being filled. All of this is being done, which is great news. But the concern from going down the line is that in terms of carrying freight, to what extent will there be sustainable operational feasibility? And by that, I mean adequate volumes to justify the services which will provide the logistics connection, right? So you need to have the regular commercial services to serve this. So you can build an airport, regular flights doesn't go, it doesn't add up too much. You can have inland waterways and you run maybe one barge every 3 weeks intermittently, it doesn't provide a solution. So how does one get from that point of just having the physical infrastructure to the point where you have regular services which are commercially feasible and therefore serve the market? Well, there I have a lot of questions, and I don't think, I'll put the questions on the table for experts to ponder over, maybe respond at some other time. One big question is that some of this will compete with each other. So when you talk about multimodality, when you have different modes in different parts of our Southeast South Asia geography, they will complement, in others, they will compete. To just give one illustrative example, you have the inland water protocol routes from West Bengal, from North India, West Bengal up to Bangladesh and Northeast India. You also have the railway development, which in about 7-8 years' time, once the Padma Bridge is done, will provide seamless rail connectivity between West Bengal all the way to Tripura. Now, both rail and water can carry competitively bulk goods. Therefore, they will at some point compete with each other. If the volume of goods of trade in this region is not huge, then one of these modes will lose out to the other. My personal feeling is waterways will lose out to railways. And I want to use this example because it drives home the point about the operational feasibility and viability. Reason being, South Asian rivers are not European rivers. They have peculiarities of their own, which means dredging costs tend to be very significant in different stretches. Because dredging costs are high, unless it is completely subsidized by the government, the commercial viability of using the inland waterway therefore reduces to a certain extent. Now, this is, of course, available for further analysis. I'm not saying what I'm saying is absolutely true. It needs to be further detailed out, but there will be issues like this. So, to answer fundamentally the question you were asking, we need to ensure exactly what Hayashi-san is trying to do. We need that kind of a comprehensive solution to model and understand what freight is potentially available, what are the best modes to carry them, do we have those modes available in these locations, and whether the different multimodal options we have, are they complementing each other in certain cases, or in some cases they will compete. It's fine if they compete, because competition can also drive costs down, drive greater efficiency. So I'm not saying having competition is a bad thing per se. So you will have this evolve out as the different infrastructures develop. Not just to have a slightly different view from Mr. Bandyopadhyay, while having an airport gives you, as an illustrative example, that having an airport gives you the ability to evacuate by air. To have that services available, again, you need to have a ground handling agent who handles, who is equipped to handle freight. For the ground handling agent to be there, you need to have adequate volumes of cargo. So sometimes the chicken and egg problem comes in. This is just specific to, for example, the air example here, where even today, even in a country like India, what we call B or C airports don't have very good freight facilities, because the cargo still is intermittent and nobody is willing to invest in that kind of a business in these locations. So these are teething challenges. In some cases, VGF funding works. In others, viability gap funding does not work. Again, it's case by case. And what Hayashi-san is attempting to do, ADB is proposing to do, will add strength to that analysis as we go forward. So I'll stop there on the first question. On the second question, quickly on the job loss and the challenges on that front. Yes, of course. Please understand, when you develop new infrastructure and new connectivity, the flow of trade also can change. So the job loss question is much bigger than the one that you are posing. So you will see realignment in supply chains. When realignment in supply chains happens, then some regions lose jobs, others gain it. A certain kind of, so for example, let's say, again, if rail becomes a really robust service servicing Nepal, India, Bangladesh corridor, then road will lose some business. Then, people in the road sector will lose employment. So this is always going to be a challenge. The idea is it overall welfare maximizing or not? And this is never an easy question to answer in the short term, because you never know how this is going to play. So eventually, I'm sorry, it sounds like a callous answer, but it's an honest answer. It's very difficult to predict some of these things. What will be the eventual impact? Whether the supply chain impact will create adequate, alternative employments in the short to medium term? Will the modal shift, job loss will be actually not really happen, because the volumes will increase so much that both modes have enough business? We don't know. These are ponderables. One can do a best attempt at modeling them, and people have, but in many cases the models have turned out to give results which do not match reality in the end. So it's a very difficult answer to give, but yes, we have to live with that when new infrastructures come up, when new systems for trade come up, you will have some employment shocks in certain parts of the entire corridor. You will have positive shocks somewhere, and you will have negative shocks elsewhere. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Pritam. I agree with you that while it is very difficult to predict, but at the same time, I do understand the importance of all this modeling, whether it is transport modeling or economic modeling. And I would say they have to be done not just in static sense, but also in dynamic sense. That's much more challenging, of course. But at least, if not exact results, they are going to tell us about certain directions or certain forecasting, I would say.
Yes,
for example,
that's why I was highlighting the work that Hayashi-san is doing is very, very critical, because it gives us something to work with.
Yeah. So I'll just say a couple of things. One example, I know that few years ago, about 6-7 years ago, maybe more, there was this economic modeling done by a few Bangladeshi economists actually on the impact of Padma Bridge. And so you can then see that given the level of investment, what would be the impact on poverty reduction, on various households' income and things like that. And therefore, the work that ADB is doing on transport modeling, and I guess that they are going to not just going to do the transport modeling, but also economic modeling to understand to see impact of all these transport networks, including economic corridors, on people's life, on their income, in reducing poverty and things like that. So on that note, we have almost come to an end of our session. I would request each of you, I mean, if you want to skip, fine, each of you to speak for 1.5 minutes for your final thoughts. So Purushottamji to begin with.
Thank you, people. Of course, thanks all the panelists for insightful presentation. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
With the whole discussions today, I think it has to focus on linking landlocked country, Nepal and Bhutan in the multimodal transport system. What I see that my area of intervention is particularly on the air service. My concern is how to link the air services with the multimodal transport systems in the sub-region. That is quite important. What you see that air transport, according to the figure of the data of IATA, of the total trade volume, 1% of the volume and 30% by value is moved by air transport. So just we can infer that only the high value items are transported by through air transportation. So for example, in the case of Nepal or Bhutan, we have several products of high value items, several high value items on export like tea, coffee, even honey, large cardamom, medicinal herbs. There are several items on our export basket that are of high value. So what I see that the perishable item and the high value commodities and the time sensitive items, which should be delivered by the time, by the definite time, it has to take the air services. So another area is about this unstable, unpredictable road condition and the long time in processing of the transit services to the port as well as to the movement of the border post and the transit movement. So that also calls for utilization of the air services. So what I see that in order to link Nepal and Bhutan's products in the multimodal transport systems and the logistics, I think we have to have the kind of road transportation and air transportation joined together. Maybe it may be from the domestic movement to the domestic airport, and as well as from the other country to raw material bringing into the country, processing it, and then sending it to exporting to other country. That is quite important. So for that to happen, just 2 minutes, and we have to have in order to operationalize the multimodal transport systems and bring the air services into operation. I think one of the important areas is to managing the fuel price. Fuel price, ATF, of course, aviation turbine fuel, it is costing much in this part of the world. So I think that is one of the areas that we have to look at. And second, I think it is the part of cargo consolidation. That is important. That is itself is a big business. And third, it is about the cold chain services. We have to develop cold chain services. That means cold warehouses at the airport, at the cargo terminal. That is important. And finally, I think that there should be liberalization of the air services. I mean, in order to increase competition among the service providers. So somebody has talked about the fifth freedom right. So BBIN countries should look into it, the possibilities of providing fifth freedom right to all the countries under a single framework.
Thank you. So in our report on multimodal connectivity in the BBIN sub-region, we are going to have a section on this, covering all these points that you have made. So thank you, Mr. Subedi. Any final thought in about a minute?
Yeah, thank you. I have, in fact, a few counter questions to the panelists or the participants here. My questions are basically, I will restrict to two of them for now, maybe take advantage again sometime in the future. I thought the theme of this particular webinar was to assess the role of Bhutan and Nepal in the BBIN sub-region to facilitate sub-regional and regional trade or access, whatever. it would be good for me to know what were the expectations from the participants on the role that Nepal or Bhutan could play in this particular regard. So if anybody has any thoughts, it will be good to know.
Okay.
And with apparent difficulties linking, having a link, railway link to Bhutan in the anytime soon, whether we will have multimodal transport connectivity anytime in the future. Of course, the inland waterway is happening. It has taken off. It has started, and I think people are using it. But again, it has its own limitation. But railway, just the inland waterway and the road transport, perhaps, of course, railway, air transport is always there. Will it amount to multimodal transport connectivity for Bhutan? I'm not quite sure. And finally, all these visions that we talked about in context of multimodal connectivity, rail, road, inland waterways, coastal, maritime, etc. These are elaborately mentioned or provided in terms of policy, in terms of strategy, in the BIMSTEC document, and prior to that in the BIMSTEC land infrastructure transport development document that was in 2014, followed by the BIMSTEC transport connectivity master plan. So I was unable to understand what exactly is the kind of vision that CORS is trying to come out with. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
We'll get back to you on this point. So, Ajhar, any final thought in about a minute?
Yes, thank you. Very quickly, perhaps two pieces that I will go away with. First is I would like to pick up on the what was just said about what's the role of Nepal and Bhutan in promoting regional connectivity. It's a key role because you are, at least for the UN system, you are the key recipient, you are the key stakeholders of the regional development. And we have examples where a landlocked country has piloted a trilateral agreement with its two major transit partners. It's Mongolia, Russia, China, trilateral agreement of facilitating transport along the Asian highway network. It was, supported, very strongly driven by a landlocked country, and then came about to be a very, very concrete facilitation exercise. So it's a trilateral agreement. You can look it up. We're involved in this, of course, and I would like to leave this as a sort of an example. It's a landlocked country who can drive a very, very ambitious initiatives. And second, we're talking about multimodality, and in as much we're developing railway and inland waterways. The issue for us with the multimodal transport, a lot of it are of a legal nature. It's just not as facilitated as we would like it to be. And it might become, it is already, there were many initiatives of harmonizing regime for multimodal transport. It's still very much an issue there. This is something ESCAP is looking at again now. And I think we cannot ignore this element that even legally or procedurally speaking, we could have all the infrastructure, we could have inland waterways in the best shape, we would still run into some problems of that order. So just leave it with that, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Arnab, any final thought?
Yeah, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that you mentioned about the possible job loss from regional cooperation projects, and economists knows that these interventions can create winner and losers by sector, by geographic regions, and actually there is economic models which can calculate those losses. The problem I face is that it's very difficult to present those results, because when we sell these projects, we don't highlight so much about the losers, because it can create some political sensitivities. But actually, in fact, those can happen. So probably we have to combine those regional cooperation projects to support, not protecting not protecting those sectors, but probably we should support those sectors to smooth, exit from the market. People moving to the more productive sectors. That kind of intervention may be combined with the regional cooperation projects. Thank
Yeah,
you very
that
much.
is something which we are also doing in our work on multimodal connectivity. We are also looking at not just what would be the impact on the ground in terms of job losses, but also what kind of new jobs which can be created as a result of all these initiatives. So on that note, Arnav, final words.
No, thanks very much. Again, very, very enriching discussion. Just wanted to mention a couple of things in view, on multimodalism, and a little bit getting challenged by Pritam, who has left the panel, I see. You see, the whole idea of multimodalism is essentially what's happening in this region is the whole transport matrix has heavily skewed towards road transport. Let's face it. I mean, 88% of transport is happening by road. So I think any opportunity to, to remove that market distortion or create another mode, be it railways, be it waterways, be it airways, must be always welcome. There would be definitely challenges. Well, that's my one, point. The second is, I think we need to think a little bit about the wider economic benefit, which you often miss. And that is also, there's an excellent opportunity when you develop a transport corridor to actually do those kinds of programs. So let's not miss it that, we shouldn't think of this only as a transport conduit and think about the challenges, what may stare us. But I think that is the added benefit we should look, and we must learn from other regions. I mean, this is also my third point. I don't think we should kind of close our eyes and ears and say, no, the BBIN is very unique. We cannot learn from any other region. And technology is now moving leaps and bounds. So who says that, if you have less water, you cannot actually fly? Today, you have several solutions, as you know, low draft vessels. You can have smaller vessels. You don't need to operate, always 1,500 or 2,000 ton vessels, and still make it commercially feasible and create jobs and create markets. So that's my final word. Thanks.
Thank you, Arnav. So on that positive note, let me close this meeting. Of course, I will request my colleagues Prashant Sharma and Srijata Dev, they are going to propose a vote of thanks. But I would just like to emphasize on one point, your last point. We must learn from other regions. It is not necessarily to be Europe or North America. There are a number of good examples in other parts of the world. In the GMS region, in Africa, I would just take two examples. Mekong Institute is one such a very good example. Ajar has just pointed out this trilateral agreement between Russia, Mongolia, and China. I think we should look at it and see how countries like Bhutan and Nepal, we are going to come out with a working note on that as part of our work. And then Office du Niger. I mean, that's on in West Africa, and countries like Mali, Burkina Faso, how they have benefited as a result of that institution. So on that note, let me now request my colleague Srijata Dev to deliver the vote of thanks. I have to leave now. I have another meeting to attend. Pritam has already left. He has another meeting which has already started. So thank you very much, everybody, and we'll be in close touch with each of you. Other than just sending the video recording of this program and the report and things like that, in terms of substantial work, we'll be in touch with you. Thank you. Over to you, Sujata.
Thank you, Bipul sir. Firstly, I would like to extend our gratitude to the speakers, Mr. Ojha and Mr. Subheri, for their respective discussion papers on which this webinar was based. Further, I would like to thank the panelists, Ms. Jaimurzina, Mr. Bandopadhyay, and Mr. Hayashi for their valuable insights. I would also like to express gratitude to all the participants who were here with us today. We thank you for your thoughts, patience, and support throughout the webinar. We would be capturing these valuable interventions in the form of a report and sending them to you in the coming days. Last but not the least, I would also like to convey thanks to my colleagues to organize and conduct this webinar successfully. Thank you so much.